Hi, it's Joel, your host here. In this very special 3-part mini-series, we focus on the stories of 3 people all from the same family and how different autoimmune diseases have significantly impacted their lives. All from the United States, you will hear from Kevin Gibbons, who has relapsing remitting multiple sclerosis, his partner Lauren Gibbons, who lives with ulcerative colitis, and Kevin's brother Matthew, who has been diagnosed with Crohn's disease. At the time of recording, we didn't plan to tell this story as one, and as such, each episode can be listened to in isolation or out of order should you wish. But as this family, one by one, stepped forward and came onto the show to share their lived experiences, it touched me on a level that even after years of being privileged enough to have a front row seat with people sharing their most personal stories, still moved me, much to my surprise. Coming from a family with a history of multiple autoimmune diseases myself, their shared experiences resonated with me and how I, as a big brother, share the pain and feelings of helplessness with my siblings who live with other inflammatory conditions. I wanted to draw the listeners' attention to the fact that these are 3 people in one family enduring so much at such young ages. I felt I owed it to them who, for the majority, were bravely telling their story publicly for the first time, to do their stories justice and give them the platform they deserve. If you enjoy these episodes, please do subscribe and leave a review wherever you listen, and thank you for listening. So, welcome back to another episode of the Chronic Pain Club talk show, guys, where we're here every Sunday night from 7 o'clock UK time to have important conversations about lived experience and what people live with their chronic long-term health conditions and pain and all the good work they might be doing to raise awareness of that. And tonight is no different. You may recall earlier in the year that we were joined by Kevin Gibbons, who shared their experience of multiple sclerosis. And tonight I'm delighted to be joined by their brother, Matthew Gibbons, who will be talking to us about Crohn's disease. So welcome in and to the show. Obviously, I'm guessing you know a little bit about us already from your brother's experience on the show, but do you want to maybe tell us a little bit about yourself?
For sure. I work in IT here in Orlando, Florida. Actually graduated from college about a year ago, last summer. So I think we've actually just hit that anniversary day, which is kind of cool. You know, I like to I'm pretty active when I can be, and I like to play video games. I know I was watching your stream yesterday, and I was invited to the server, so I guess I have to be doing that soon. Um, but yeah, I'm a bit of a talker, so I know you said you're tired. I got your back here.
That's good. We already ticked 2 boxes. You've plugged one of our other peer support spaces, and you're willing to take up the reins on the talk. So yeah, you're already you get a win in my book. But yeah, thank you so much for joining us. So this is the first time on the Chronic Pain Club we've covered Crohn's, which seems crazy when we have so many in our community that have that as a sort of like secondary primary secondary, you know what I mean when I say that. Lots of people in the arthritis space I know go on to have either things like UC or Crohn's or other things like that. So but for those of us that are not who've not lived with that, not experienced that, could you maybe give us a quick overview of what the disease is before we sort of dig into your story?
Absolutely. So Crohn's disease can actually affect anywhere along the GI tract. So that's where it kind of differs from ulcerative colitis, where ulcerative colitis targets exclusively the colon with ulcers. Um, Crohn's can do the same thing, but anywhere. So you can get ulcers in your stomach, your esophagus, in your small intestine, large intestine, just about anywhere. So
I can only, well, I can't imagine how painful and all that, and the complications, which I'm sure we'll get into with that, which I know is a subject that probably isn't talked about enough. So I do appreciate you joining us with this and going through it. And I should say this more on the show to him. But if there's anything that comes up that you are uncomfortable with, because I always tend to ask like a mental health question and things like that, or anything that's a bit sensitive, then obviously you can always ask us to move on, and we will absolutely respect that. Okay. So where did your what sort of age, what did onset look like for you with Crohn's? What was that experience?
Well, so my first experience with it started after my freshman year of college, and so it didn't happen like during finals week. There was nothing going on crazy like that. But I got out of my first year and then came home for a week. So I went from eating at college to eating at home. So eating real food again. And then I think the next week we ended up going to New Orleans for Kevin's graduation. So we were there for a little bit then. And so that was going from eating real food to eating a whole bunch of really tasty real food. Um, and so the last thing we did there, I think we went to we had like a we went to a restaurant that was like an Italian place, and they kind of took a while to bring our food out. Kind of came back like warm, if not kind of cool. Like it was weird. It was a very weird experience. Following day, I was having some lower GI troubles, and I was like, hey, this is weird. But whatever, right? It could have been food. So I asked my mom about it, and she was having the same problem. Like, cool, great, whatever. So we went home, right? It was still going on for a few days. I was like, okay, I guess. And then over the next like week, I was like, hey, so this is still going on. How are you doing? And she was like, mine's better. Keep an eye on that. So, but that was when we kind of like got our first inkling that something was wrong. Um, and that was the start of a 6-week journey of trying to figure out what's wrong. Because at the time, I was active, right? Like I said, freshman year in college, I just got back home, so I'd been going to the gym. Like there was nothing. Like I was kind of in my own element at that point. And so at the time when it started, I was about like 155 pounds. At the end of it, I was down to like 125, 120. I lost a considerable amount of weight um, over that 6-week period. And I could actually break it down. Every 2 weeks, something changed. So the first 2 weeks, I was, it was annoying, but like it didn't really affect me that much. I didn't really notice any physical changes. And then the second 2 weeks, um, that's when I started noticing like the weight loss. I wasn't losing muscle. I was losing the limited fat that I had left, but it was like whatever. It's not that bad. And then that last 2 weeks, I was just tired. I couldn't go and be active like I liked because I had come back from that graduation and was going to my high school's track practices because my sprint coach let me. Um, so uh, I would go out and do late season sprint workouts without too much trouble, minus the risky bowel issues that could happen. So like nothing serious happened, but it did start getting challenging um when I was like first going through those first 2 weeks. But by those last 2 weeks, I had lost weight. I was noticeably thinner and lighter, and I didn't want to like go out and do stuff. I was much more, not necessarily bedridden, but certainly homebound. I was going to sit down. I was going to play video games. I didn't want to go and do anything because being active was hard.
And that must have been terrible for everything we're told about being, noticing when we rapidly lose weight and the things Dr. Google's going to tell you about that. That must have been like really terrifying experience for you doing such a short space of time.
It was very weird, especially I was like 19 years old. I was very young for my diagnosis from what my doctor told me. There were a few things that were a saving grace. It was very strange what things did it. Um, One night we had spaghetti, and I was like, I mean, I don't care. I'm going for it because my mom makes the best spaghetti ever. So I ate like 2 pounds of spaghetti, and then for like 24 hours, nothing. No bowel trouble. I was like, what just happened? What was in that spaghetti that made this better for a day, one whole day? So that is, I've learned, is probably my cure all for everything. If ever I find someone who's sick, I'd be like, I know
Yeah.
how to make the spaghetti. I got you.
and I suppose though, did you I know obviously you said at the start it started with food and things, but was that something you instantly made sort of like a link to or correlation with, or were you completely in the dark at this point?
Well, I think with that one, it was probably some weird like what we figured happened was I kind of got my body got shocked a little bit because I was going from Orlando, Florida to Washington State. So I had jet lag. And then I ate food at home on a weird food schedule because I was jet lagged. And then I went to New Orleans, which is another 2 hour jump back the other way. So I got re jet lagged and then ate weird food again. Like I was really putting my body through the ringer for like a 2 week strain. And that probably is what got me. We don't know. I don't know. Maybe I got like a little food poisoning or something, or maybe the food was a little suspect at that Italian restaurant because that was when it started. The night or the morning after that restaurant was when it began, and then just never stopped. And it wasn't like I had anything that Crohn's says don't eat. Right. The thing about Crohn's and colitis both are like don't eat seeds, don't eat raw vegetables. Roasted vegetables are bad. Steamed vegetables are good because they're soft and squishy, like that kind of stuff. I didn't do any of that. I didn't break any of those rules because I didn't even know I had to follow them, but they weren't even an issue at the time.
And the thing is, Crohn's is not immune disease, right? And we know that, like, with everything there's more and more research coming out. There's people who they're finding their psoriasis got triggered by a random virus, or people got
Mhm.
COVID and it then went on to, because ultimately it's your immune system overreacting, isn't it? So
Mhm.
who knows? Maybe a food poisoning could trigger that.
Right. Kicked it off, right?
Yeah, it's
I was just my body was excited to fight a disease and finally was like, I found one.
yeah, yeah, and now
That
I'm
one.
just not going to stop. But we laugh because we both got that experience, but at the
Exactly.
time, it's not funny. But that's the only way I can explain it to people. It's just like our bodies pick a fight with themselves. They get bored, and that's what they
Right.
do.
Gotta find something to fight.
Yeah, and then people wonder why and can't link the whole fatigue thing. That's my big issue. Like, without going too off on a tangent, it's like, because fatigue in chronic illness is crippling, but it tends to be one
Mhm.
of those conditions that people just palm off. But they don't understand the biological processes that are going on that are exhausting you. It's not that you just feel a bit tired; it's that
Right.
everything's going on under the
Your
surface,
body's
isn't it?
falling apart from the inside.
Yeah, so by just like fighting itself. But so so you went through that period. You obviously lost all that weight, which must have been like rather worrying. And then how long did it sort of take from that experience to start to get some answers, or what did that next bit
Um,
look like? I suppose.
so it was 6 weeks because by the end of that 6 weeks was, I had started going to a GI doctor and we'd gone through all
Oh,
the
okay.
things, right? All the blood tests, all the, the best part ever, the stool samples, not the best part. Because they had to see if there are, parasites, whatever else, things like that, because it could be anything. They have to just knock out everything on the checklist to see what it could be. All the way down to, okay, last option, colonoscopy. Let's find out what's going on. And that's how I got my diagnosis. After that, what they did was, my doctor's like, okay, so we're going to do more blood tests, because we need to get to find out, how immune you are to everything ever. Because we're going to put you on prednisone, a steroid, to stop the flare up. And then we're going to get you on an immunosuppressant and Humira. And those last two are together, the immunosuppressant, so my body doesn't form an immunity to the Humira, and the Humira to actually resolve the illness. So, um, and it was a quite the fight. Those the For that last part because we had to get some pre-approvals. I had to get the shingles vaccine at 19 years old, which had just been, the Shingrix vaccine thing had been just coming out here in the States, and people were talking about it, and it was a huge deal because it was for people over 55, people who were at risk of getting shingles because they had chickenpox. I had to get triaged because they didn't have enough Shingrix vaccines to give to everyone. So I had to get one, with a special note. uh, and I only got one of the two because it was a series, and I didn't actually finish the series. So you know, but for its purpose, I'm sure it did fine. I haven't gotten shingles,
Yeah, that's good.
but but it was a lot of getting revaccinated. Lots of boosters and I think one of them was like Hep C. Like
Yeah.
it was quite a lot of blood draws. Fortunately, most of them were after my first colonoscopy, so I was still blasted loopy. from the anesthetic.
I've
Now,
actually had a couple of those, and I called my mum after one, and she still to this day says the most bizarre phone call she's ever had.
it's
Because I was
well,
just talking rubbish.
I ended up going. So after the blood draws, me and my mom went to IHOP. I was like, no, 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 I can order this food. And like you could tell, like they didn't have a waiter, they had the manager waiting on our table because I come in pajamas at like 11. Like it was clearly like something was going on, and it probably took me like 3 minutes or more to order my food. I ordered so much stuff, I like half remember eating any of it. It was great.
Yeah.
Very good post colonoscopy food is IHOP.
Yeah, I remember being very hungry afterwards as well.
Hmm.
But you talked about like the biologics. I'm on Shibira as well, and that people don't see that side of it, do they? They don't see the all the vaccination stuff, the pneumonia jabs, the
Hmm.
test and the annual flu jabs and all this stuff because I had to confront a lot of this during the pandemic where people couldn't see how a guy in his 30s was in the high risk group and for those
Hmm.
reasons and I suppose with yours moves really quickly. Which on this we joke on this show we get a lot of people who like have 7-8 year diagnosis journeys.
Right.
Yours obviously moves really quickly, so that must have also been a lot to take in because you've got the condition and the diagnosis, and then obviously the severity of the treatment as well.
Yeah, so my girlfriend at the time, she actually had a pretty hard time with it because she had suggested like she was asking me to like what does she need to do to help? There really isn't anything anyone really could have done. Like we were just all we were doing, the people who could help were doctors and they were doing everything they could, right? It was just about waiting to find out what we got. It wasn't like there really wasn't a whole lot to do. You know, we had to, it was essentially stop being active because that is not helping right now.
Yeah.
So it did it was a little bit surprising, like I said, but especially losing all that weight because the problem I had is after that summer I went back to school, of course, and um and I was in the marching band. So, and I wasn't just in the marching band playing some, I wasn't playing like the trumpet, something light and easy to hold on to. No, I have elected to be playing the tuba and the sousaphone. If you
Right.
haven't seen a sousaphone,
I haven't
you
seen a
wear it.
sousaphone.
You
No.
wear it around your body. It's a marching tuba and it sits entirely on your left shoulder, almost
Okay.
exclusively. It's like 35 pounds. So all of the weight that I had lost over summer, I had then put into a large brass instrument and put on my shoulder. That wasn't what you're supposed to do. Because by that point, after those last 2 weeks, my muscles had probably started getting weaker because I didn't have any more fat to burn. Um, so I was losing weight that was muscular too. So I
Is
had
that
a
the
very,
reason?
very
Sorry to interrupt. Is that the reason they were telling you not to be active? Just from my ignorance, I didn't.
well, that was kind of, yeah, honestly, because like for me, when I was getting that exhausted, it was too hard to do stuff. And like I said, it didn't make it better, because exercise and activity would, it makes you, though it doesn't make you feel stressed, right? It releases the stress hormone, which makes your flare up worse.
Yeah.
Um, so, but like I had a very challenging band camp that year because all of the muscle mass that I had gained from the previous year marching was gone, minus some. It was even worse. So
And how was that like for you? You said like your partner at the time was like struggled. That must be really hard for you to get your head around as well. All of those changes and everything.
it it was very weird. Like it was a hard thing to. It's strange to have someone pressure to help. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because and like I don't hold any. There's no like grudge about that. Like I get it. I understand what was trying to happen, but there was a push to say, "How can I help?" And it's like, I don't have an answer.
Yeah.
There was no answer to that question, and that was very challenging because I felt, unhelpful, and also separately a little helpless. I couldn't do anything myself except for eat more spaghetti, I guess. But like, there wasn't really much that could happen.
Yeah, and it is hard. Like as somebody that flares and remisses as well, people underestimate that. Like I go periods of my life where I'm like massively independent and
Hmm.
sporty and athletic, and then that suddenly all comes crumbling down. And obviously, those around you want to help, but when you're in that place, you're so frustrated and mentally like damaged. I can't think of a better
Right.
word. It's like sometimes people doing that can feel quite like smothering. So like I'll always tell people like just ask me what I need. Don't offer stuff. Don't assume. Don't try and do
Right.
things for me because you're just going to dent my pride more. So just like say like every day like what do you need me to do? And then I can say nothing or I can say actually could you just do X, Y, and Z? Do you know what I mean? But it's a
Right.
really
Right.
hard skill to master, isn't it?
Hmm.
And it is one we I'm trying to get we're gonna have a caregivers show on this on the Chronic Pain Club as well because I think it'd be a really important one to ask those folks about as well. Like 'cause it must be really difficult on the other side of the table as well for when all these changes take place.
Absolutely.
So you got the treatment and everything, and how did you see a fairly quick you know return from that, or what challenges did you face with that?
So that's actually pretty interesting. The prednisone absolutely stopped the flare up, which is what it was supposed to do. Um, and so I was able to start like gaining some weight again. Like I said, I think by the time I got to band camp, I was like 125. So it's still, I wasn't back yet, but we were getting there. One of the things that I noticed that was very strange was I had a newly developed lactose intolerance for like a few months, like,
Okay.
which was really weird, very weird, because that's gone now. I have no idea where it came from. Other than Crohn's was like, "Ooh." So it just
Yeah.
just wanted to make something weird. Um, so my
And that
mom
is,
and I,
I've never actually got any answers to that, but like, I find I have a lot worse allergies when I'm flaring. So like
yeah,
my animal allergy will be worse when I'm flaring. I have no idea what the science is behind that, or if it's even a thing. It's just something that happens to me. So maybe that's
I
something
would
similar.
right, I would figure that has to do because I would imagine all it is, right? It's just an immune response, right?
Yeah,
So lactose intolerance, animal allergy, all immune responses, and if you're having a flare up, your immune system's still just going. So like, it must be that, right?
yeah. That's
But it was very, very strange. And so my mom and I went and started looking to try, dairy-free ice cream because let's find one. And I saw an ad for Haagen-Dazs, and because your phone listens to you and all that. I was like, great, perfect. So turns out, if ever you're looking for dairy-free ice cream, Haagen-Dazs is the best one.
okay. Well, I'll bear that in
So
mind.
a little note for you there,
For
because
the
I
next
tried a
time my
lot.
immune system sideswipes me.
Yeah, right. It
with-
says lactose intolerance.
I just can't believe like how well obviously in reality it might be slightly different, but it's so rapid. We're so used to like slow burn. Sometimes onset stuff will be rapid, but then the
Mhm.
diagnosis and the treatment, I don't know. I'm just really impressed that you got answers quite quickly. You had everything thrown at it, and but that also must have been so hard to process because everything's turbocharged.
Well, I think yes, because it was a lot. There was a lot of doctor visits, like I said, and lots of blood draws and things like that. Getting referrals to new doctors, right? That's how I got to the GI doc, right? All that kind of stuff. Um, I have a feeling though, it was because they were like every time you go to the doctor, they weigh you. I was
Ah,
going to the
okay.
doctor a lot. They were keeping track of my weight too, and they were noticing problems because most of the time in a like if you're having that issue, right? I think the way the primary care doc called it was like acute diarrheal something or other, which, that's essentially not necessarily dysentery, but pretty much.
Yeah.
That was the problem. I was losing weight and water too fast. So I think the reason it had to go fast is because it was a very risky situation to be in. That's it could kill people if it doesn't get diagnosed technically. Because if it never stops, it never stops. You just keep losing weight. Um, but that I would imagine is part of the reason it had to go so fast.
Yeah.
Because when you have something like that, it's critical.
Yeah, and the thing is, I suppose that's why I'm looking at it with like arthritis glasses on, because
Hmm.
like ours tends to be a very slow burn kind of world. But then every now and then in that autoimmune sort of field, same with like lupus and things like that, obviously things get a lot more serious, don't they? So yeah, I probably
Yeah,
hadn't appreciated how quickly you were like, if you're not getting what you need, then obviously
yeah,
that
you're
becomes
in some
dangerous
trouble.
quite quickly. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how? So those in terms of like the biologics and stuff, was that a sort of fairly quick? Did that help, or was there sort of some confusion early on because they threw you on all this stuff that what was steroid, what was Humira,
Um,
etc.
it was it was a bit challenging at first. Like the prednisone and the immunosuppressant weren't the bad parts. And in fact, I think I stopped the immunosuppressant pretty quick. Or maybe the second one, something like that, because I started getting an itchy throat, and my doctor was like, "Stop taking it."
Yeah.
So I was like, "All right, cool, no problem." Um, but with Humira, as you probably recall, the loading doses. The first one is those, 4 injections, and then the second one is 2. And I started that, before they had was it the citrate free pens?
Yeah, that was horrible. I was like getting stung by a wasp
Those
every
were
single week. It was
those
horrible.
like, I got to the point in college when I was like, I had gotten to the point where I was dreading my injection because it hurt so much.
Yeah,
Even if I let it sit out and warm all the way up to room temperature and all of that, it didn't matter. It just burned. And so
yeah,
when they had
it
the
was horrible. Like
yeah.
as someone that I'd self-injected methotrexate like since I was young, and so
Mhm.
I was used to drawing up needles and I have a pen that does it all for me, and yet I started developing a fear because you knew that sting was just
Right. It's
inevitable. Well,
just gonna hurt again,
yeah,
like, every time.
yeah. But yeah, citrate. Somebody said in chat, citrate thing is free is a thing. It certainly is. They got rid of it in Humira about 2 years ago, but all the biosimilars, unfortunately, folks, for anyone watching this at the moment, is a lot of those still contain it. So unfortunately, that's why some of you may be still experiencing that sting.
I
Sorry,
know.
Matthew,
It's
I digress, but it's not
no,
fun.
it's fine. I was looking at those chats too. I'm like, "Oh, man, is that a rare thing? Oh, no."
Mm.
Um,
Yeah, but
yeah,
they
that was
did. I had a horrible bit of luck where just as Humira got rid of it, I got switched to a biosimilar temporarily that still had it. I was like, really?
of course you did.
And I can't tell you after having a month or two break from it how hard it was to go back to that sting. But yeah, so I don't know about you, and obviously you've got a different condition, but for me, biologics just blew my mind. Within
Mhm.
2 weeks, I started seeing like proper
Right.
improvements.
Immediate
Not
yeah.
yeah, and did you?
That,
How did you process that? Because I started thinking I was imagining it, or it was a fake, or I thought placebo. I didn't know what it was. It just blew my mind.
mhm. I actually did a little bit looking into it because it was so interesting to me that they had a medication that just makes your immune system stop being so ridiculous. I was like, "Oh, so my immune system has gone from above average to average now. So now I won't fight myself, I'll fight regular things probably." And I've had a few, issues here and there, right? I've gotten ill and um I've gotten ill, and when I get sick, I like commit to it. Like I like I
You're
get
going
sick.
all in.
It was bad. The
That is the
last
nature of the
time,
disease, though, isn't it?
yeah, right.
Surely. Yeah.
It was so weird. There was one time, like it was like 2 years ago now, and it's like the last time I've actually been like sick. So, like I said, I committed to it, and we're good for a couple of years, I guess. I got like a stomach bug and strep throat at the same time.
Oh, nice.
Oh, dude, I was falling apart. It was terrible. Um, and that was actually the last time, Jarrett, who's in chat, that was the last time he was my roommate. So in the time that we were roommates to the time we're now roommates again, I haven't been sick since then, which is
Oh,
very
that's
strange.
awesome. That's
Um,
awesome. Especially like,
but
so I'm guessing you don't get any, like infections from the biologics or anything like that.
nothing really, no.
Awesome.
I didn't have any issues really with my starting Humira. Other than, like I said, the pain from the injection and hating that. Um, I didn't really get I didn't get sick from starting it. I did actually send some emails to I did send some emails to my directors because it's like, "Hey, um, here's what's going on. I will be extra immunosuppressed now, so I got to be extra careful during band camp this year." They said, "All right, cool, just checking." I just had to let them know. Um, but I didn't really have anything start up because of my injections, and I think that was partially because of my physician at the time. He did a very good job of keeping track of all of my titers and making sure everything was well immune, because that is how people get sick after they start Humira. A lot of times, the Hep C one was a big one because that'll just show up out of nowhere and people get hepatitis C and then get very sick. So we knocked that out before I started anything.
People seem to get quite offended if my inbox has anything to go by about why all those tests are done. Like, what they accuse me of. So no, I don't think you realise how the drug works. Go and Google it some more.
Right.
Because
there's a reason they need to know.
It's going to dig out, because it's like pneumonia. Many of us get exposed to pneumonia, but you have to actually sort of be vulnerable and in a place where it can become a problem. And unfortunately, I think, I don't know what it's like in the US, but in the UK, we're really bad at that. We'll say to somebody, right, you've got this, take this drug, and they don't explain what it's for or why you have to have the blood test or how important they are, and and then they wonder why people don't adhere to it or they don't toe the line because they're not informed and educated on the risks.
Right. I know. I occasionally frequent X, formerly known as Twitter.
Refuse to call it X.
That is not the best thing ever. Because every now and again you'll see those tweets about people saying, "Hey, be your own advocate in your healthcare," which is a very good point. If someone doesn't tell you why you need to take it, ask, because they'll tell you. And if they don't, keep asking. Just keep bothering them. They aren't going to leave the room. They are truly a captive audience until they make sure that like what to do and that you're going to be taking your medication.
Yeah.
So that's my argument is absolutely say why, because I ask questions at doctors' offices all the time, and I can tell sometimes it bothers them, but I ask questions because I'm curious and I want answers.
Yeah. And I'll say to people as well, like, you don't because I think people hear the word like advocate or advocate for themselves and think they have to like be doing some grand gestury thing. So no, literally it's just asking questions,
right?
Feeling empowered. Yeah, feeling empowered to be involved in your own care. Because if you don't know, so one of the big issues we get in the autoimmune world is like people want to rush to biologics and they get frustrated because they see on social media everyone doing their biologics injections and they don't understand why they're stuck on an oral systemic further down the road. But if they haven't asked the questions to understand what they're trying to achieve and what hoops they have to go through, and especially here in the NHS, what financial gates you have to go through, do you know what I mean? It's like, but if you don't ask those questions and you just are a passenger, then it's going to be a very frustrating experience, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, and we fought with insurance when I had to get on Humira, and every time we have ever changed insurances, we have to fight about, why do I have to wait 2 months to get, my next specialty pharmacy? And why do I have to wait for this to get pre-approved? Right. Yeah. I needed it before. I still need it. Like, it's still a problem. It didn't go away because, as we all know, Crohn's is not a thing that gets cured. That's not how that works. So
no.
It's
whatever nonsense you read on Instagram.
Yeah, right. It's such a weird fight, those prior authorizations, because it shouldn't be that hard. If I was taking it before, I probably still need it now. Like, it's not going anywhere.
Every time we have someone come on the States and talk about that side of the insurance thing, I just think I wouldn't have the energy to last 5 minutes in that environment. I'd need somebody else advocating for me on that one, I think.
Yeah, it's special. All right. That's a special time. I haven't had to do it myself yet. Let's see, was it 26 is when I have to get my own insurance? I'll be waiting until I'm 26, which is, we're actually just about a year away. I don't want to think about it.
Yeah, no. So we'll move on from that.
Yeah, right. Oh no.
So things obviously started to improve. Did you then? I suppose you must have had to make like life changes and things and adapt to live with the condition, or did the medication work and you just carried on till the next flare? How did that sort of look?
Actually, the medications worked very, very well. So I haven't had a flare up since my first one because of Humira.
Amazing.
Yeah, it's pretty stellar. So I've been able to, though you're not supposed to eat seeds and crunchy vegetables and all those things, I still do, and I still can. I don't eat corn, but that's because I don't. That one does get me for some reason, and I was like, does that get everyone? And some people say yes, and some people say no. So that means no, it doesn't get everyone, and that's why I don't eat it, because I think that one will get things upset for sure.
Yeah.
But so I haven't really had to do any major changes. Like I said, there is that small bout of the lactose intolerance that went away that was the only time I really changed a diet a little bit. Um, but most of the time it's pretty steady. I can kind of coast, and I don't have to worry about it too much, which is very
That's
fortunate.
yeah, that's awesome, and that's also nice to hear that on a Sunday night because
Yeah.
we really don't. It tends to be a bit of us like somebody trying to climb a mountain range of ups and downs and things like that. So yeah, it's nice to hear that that's stabilized and yeah, and you're just going on. So I suppose now feels like we should probably sort of double down on that to give people some
Mhm.
hope that are listening and everything, and hopefully do find the right combination. So I suppose so. Are you still doing sort of like the athletic stuff? Are you still sort of active and them sort of
So
things?
that is actually one of the biggest challenges that I've been facing, because I have an office job. So much fun. Because that's what IT work is. I'm on site IT, so I have to be at an office for 8 hours a day. And recently, I saw that there was a standing desk on the HR side of the office, and I asked if I could use it, and they said yes. So I've been standing at work, and that alone has made me lose like 3 or 4 pounds.
Really?
Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, it's sitting down all day is not good for you. Wouldn't you
No,
have
tell
it?
me yeah, tell me I know that after the last
So
3 or 4 years.
yeah, right. So I got a standing desk from HR because I was like, well, they're not going to use it. And that's been pretty nice. But in the next coming weeks, I'm actually going to be getting back to the gym, because I have some goals in mind myself. Because after college, right, you start working, you start gaining weight because all of a sudden you're 8 hours a day at work, not being able to go to the gym, at 12:30 in the middle of the day for no reason, which was awesome. Thanks, college. But now I don't know what I'm going to do that. So,
Yeah.
um, especially because, then in my, in my prime college days, which was, 2 years ago, um, I would go to the
Makes me feel
gym.
so old. Makes
I
me
know,
feel so
right?
old.
I would, so actually, what's really cool, I know, what's really neat is my gym, my college gym had a climbing tower, like a rock climbing tower
Okay,
indoors,
yeah.
which was awesome. And so I would go to the gym for like 3 hours. I would go work out for an hour, hour and a half, and then I would go over to the climbing tower and climb. Um, and everyone at the climbing tower thought I was insane because they would see me doing my workouts and then see me come to the tower and climb anyway. Um, but
Okay.
that's that was the last time I was like super active. Like I said, I want to get back into it because I can and I should.
And do you think sort of like being younger and fit and healthy, do you think that contributed to your sort of recovery? Because that is a fairly impressive like result, isn't it? You know, that you get a drug combination, it works. We all know that Humira's proven with those sort of
Hmm.
conditions. Um, but do you think that that played a part in not just getting you back to being well, but staying well?
I think so, and I think also because I was fortunate that my Crohn's is actually relatively minor, because it can be minor, moderate to severe. It could be debilitating to some people. I got lucky that, like I said, my Crohn's is very minor. I have a um ulcer, not 20,
Yeah.
or not a destroyed whatever. I don't have anything going super crazy, which is probably one of the biggest parts of my success. I just had a fortunate situation. And I do think being young, because of course being young always helps, with recovery with anything. Um, and at the time I was as active as I could be. So yes, I would say if you can focus on, just, being health conscious, even if you don't have an autoimmune disease or, a chronic illness, like that protects you from, if you find out that you do, you'll be okay for maybe a little longer, because your body's already, in good shape, in good health, and it keeps you checked in.
I think for me, the one thing that's really jumping at me from your story is just how important that quick diagnosis, early treatment thing is. Because, I've got a couple of friends with Crohn's and
Mhm.
it's not that outcome. Things have been taken out, things have been replaced, and, without
Mhm.
going
Mhm.
into too much detail, and that significantly changed their everyday life. But obviously yours was caught really quickly, and it shows you how important getting access to things like biologics is, because it just basically put a lid on it. And I had the same in a different condition. I
Hmm.
can't change the historic damage that happened, but it kind of airlocked it, and
Yeah,
it's
right. It
they're
prevents
suspended.
further damage. Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's not to say those things don't will last forever, because we know they don't. And people have to change biologics and things like that. But yeah, so I suppose for anyone that's I feel like we've already answered this in terms of like what, like, that importance of, if something changes, getting help. I don't know if anything you
Hmm.
want to sort of say about that, because clearly it had a benefit, didn't it?
Right. So I would say, because like in my case, like I said, there was like a week of lowered GI troubles. I was like, this is weird, and it just so happened to be after a food thing, right? So that probably delayed me maybe just a week, right? Because most of the time, food poisoning is like a couple days. So, side note, food poisoning is only just a couple days. If you have food poisoning for a week, it's probably not food poisoning.
Yeah, that
So,
feels like a really good point to hammer.
so that might help. But also, being mindful of like, you know, how you're feeling now compared to how you normally feel. Find your baseline, keep that in mind, and then compare to that. Um, because that's how you can tell. It's like, oh, something's wrong. Oh, my, let's say stomach feels weird or whatever. That's how we find out we're sick, right? You take your temperature because, man, I feel warm today. Um, which is because you're feeling out of the norm, right? Then that's really just being mindful of where's normal. Can you make normal better so that when you're bad, you feel more bad, or at least less normal, so you can catch it sooner, that kind of stuff. It really just comes down to being mindful.
Yeah, I think that is probably one of the most important bits we've covered tonight. That and the whole ask questions and
Hmm.
and
Oh
advocate
yeah,
for
ask those
yourself. And
doctors. Really make them tell you what's up.
yeah, and also, like we said earlier, understanding what's happening and why, because I think we get so, and I do it. I'm the biggest hypocrite when I'm telling people to do X, Y, and Z, and then I'll go to a doctor and be a bit of a nod and dog. I'll just be
Hmm.
like, yeah, 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 and then I'll walk away, leave the room, and just like, what does that mean? Or
Right.
what
Wait,
happens
what
if
just
this doesn't
happened?
work? Yeah, what's the
Right.
plan B? I never ask what plan B is. That's something I've got to personally try and work on. I'll just
Hmm.
accept it and then not actually say, well, yeah, but what if?
Right.
So I think they're
What
really,
happens if this doesn't work?
yeah,
I also
yeah,
know that if you ever have any drug questions, you can always ask a pharmacist too. You can even ask the
yes.
doctor if you can ask a pharmacist, because they'll probably have someone they can call. They're a doctor's office.
Yeah, we have a resident pharmacist, Dr. Ashley Perkins, has joined us twice. It's probably due to get her back again, and she would be the first. She'd be celebrating that point right there. She'd be whooping and everything, because yeah, she's always trying to make the point that, look, we are medical professionals too. We can be
Hmm.
that first point of contact, and it was
Absolutely.
something I probably didn't appreciate until I become a dad. You suddenly have a baby or a toddler.
Hmm.
Pharmacies are invaluable, to go in at 11 o'clock at night or whatever and ask about some random rash that's appeared.
Right. Right.
But we don't sort of see it for ourselves as adults. So I think it's a really good point.
Well, and I also like to think that, like, doctors are great at prescribing medication, but it's not their job to know everything about every medication. That
Yeah.
is more on the pharmacist. Pharmacists are supposed to know more about how drugs interact with other drugs, if you have to worry about that, or what side effects it might cause. Doctors know how to identify issues, but might not be the first best choice on what does this medicine do. Um, on
That
this,
is an excellent point. And
yeah.
it can be proven when I go in with an infection to my GP or primary healthcare doctor, as you
Mhm,
guys would
mhm.
probably call it, and have to remind them that biologics masks a fever. Because the first thing they'll do, I'll say, I've got an infection. The thermometer goes in the air, and I say, you won't see a temperature. You
Right.
just won't.
You'll never notice.
Yeah, it won't get to that height. If it does, I'd already be in hospital. So, or the best one, they get out a giant book, don't they, to look up the
Mhm.
to look up the medicine you're on. So that's a good point. um, Brilliant. So I feel like we've covered loads there. I feel like it's just nice to do like a good. And that's not a good news story. Your experience, obviously, at the time wasn't fun and everything else, but a well
Yeah.
managed. You know what I mean?
Right,
A well
right.
managed. I think
A
it
good
gives,
case.
hopefully,
Right.
yeah, it gives people hope, and we know we don't take this stuff for granted. I did. I unfortunately in my 20s did take a period of remission for granted, and then you sort of fall further. So like we know that stuff isn't always going to stay the status quo, but
Mhm.
it's really nice that you're joining us now in a really good place. So we've kind of covered, about getting help quickly and everything else. Is there anyone, if anyone's newly diagnosed with Crohn's today, particularly a younger person, I know what it's like when people take to social media and things like that, and they might see worst case scenario, and people that
Mhm.
maybe lived with it for a lot of years. What would your sort of like words of advice be to somebody newly diagnosed?
I would probably say something. I have to tell them that it's going to get better because it does. Um, whatever medication you're going to take, whatever is going to stop that initial flare up, that is a magical experience because all of a sudden it's better. And then it's being mindful of what changes you have to make, at least for now, and depending on severity, forever. In my case, my mom has been very good at keeping things that are good for Crohn's and colitis on our dinner table. Whenever we be home, she has to be mindful of that stuff, and she does a great job of it. Um, but someone newly diagnosed, I'd certainly say, don't worry, it'll be fine. Listen to the doctors, ask your questions because you're going to have some, and they're there to help you because this is a diagnosis and it's a serious one. This is lifelong, not temporary. So when you have questions, you need to ask them. That way, you'll be informed of your own disease too, because not everyone is, and in fact, most people aren't. Because I know you mentioned, Joel. I know you mentioned the COVID situation. A lot of people came out of the woodworks being very upset at people with autoimmune diseases for no reason. Um,
Yeah,
Apparently, you just get surprise targeted for whenever
yeah,
there's a pandemic, I guess.
yeah.
Um,
Nobody
so
saw us when we're just getting on with our lives, trying to sort of
exactly,
battle
because we
these
can kind of
things.
chill.
But
But
yeah,
the instant someone who's 20 is part of the at risk community, they're like, no, you're not. That's a lie. Nothing looks nothing looks wrong. That's a very big line that you'll hear whenever something is, especially with an autoimmune disease. Don't let it get to you because you're right. Nothing looks wrong, but there is, and it's okay to manage and control your symptoms, your health, and that kind of stuff. It's important.
beautifully articulated. So thank you so much. I feel like I need to clip that last little bit for anyone to see that on YouTube as well in the future. So I will grab that at some point. Right, I will let you go and enjoy the sunshine. Matthew, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for articulating all of that so beautifully. I know it's going to help a lot of people when I edit this up for people to sort of consume wherever it is that they consume their content. And yeah, and all the best for everything. And long may your sort of good health continue.
Of course. Thanks so much. Thanks for having me.